You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. You know what that means. That means we are previewing a game. Michigan taking on Maryland in week 4. Start of Big Ten play, homecoming at the Big House. And to help us preview Maryland, as promised, we have the full ride American Treasure. I had a whole plan. It didn't quite go as well as I wanted to do it. I was trying to emulate Chris Childers, didn't work. But there's Allie Gehring joining us. She is a proud Maryland alum, fan, all of those things. Allie, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And it's okay. Nobody can emulate the show pony. So that's big shoes to fill.
I know. Ever since I asked you at the beginning of the week, I'm like sitting there thinking like, here's how I'm going to say it. Here's what I'm going to say. And it's going to come across just like Childers. I'm going to send it to Childers and he's going to be like, you had a perfect impression of me. And I did not do it. So is what it is nonetheless. But anyway, thank you for joining. Let's get into Maryland and what Maryland presents. So far, Maryland is 3-0. I know that we've seen this script before, but what, in your eyes, what is this Maryland team? Is it different? A different version of 3-0 than what you've seen in the past? Is what's working right now for the Terps?
Well, you want to know a stat that just horrendously depressed me as a fan? So you obviously said I work on Full Ride. Rick Neuheisel is also on a show on CBS Sports Network called Inside College Football. And here's the stat they threw at us about Maryland football. This is the 5th time in 6 seasons that Maryland has started 2-0 or better. However, if 4 out of the last 5 times that happened, the first loss has come by at least 3 touchdowns. So when you say we've seen this before for Maryland, it's totally true. I certainly hope that it's different. I think this is a deeper team than Mike Locksley has had in the past. I think Taulia Tagovailoa has been so consistent. He's been just great at quarterback. I can't tell you how many analysts we've had on the show that wax poetic about him, put him in the same sentence as CJ Stroud and now JJ McCarthy in the Big Ten. So this will be a huge test for him. Obviously, Michigan's defense is going to present a much bigger challenge than Charlotte, SMU, or Buffalo.
Right. And I that's, to me, that's one of the big cruxes. And obviously, Taulia Tagovailoa scares me. I'm sure he scares most Michigan fans. And then you've got the full complement of wide receivers, including Dante Demas, who's back. Michigan didn't get to see him last year. You got a running game with Roman Hemby suddenly bursting out onto the scene the first 3 weeks. I think that scares a lot of Michigan fans. But what I'm curious about when it comes to Maryland is it's the constant reshuffling of the deck on defense. And there's certainly some talent there. I believe the leading linebacker is a true freshman, a former 4-star out of St. Francis Academy, which Michigan fans have a lot of familiarity with. Biff Poggi, the former coach there, is an assistant head coach here in Ann Arbor. Michigan has Blake Corum and Yabayoki and Nikai Hill-Green, plenty of players from that program. But what have you seen from the defense in the early going? Because I think that is obviously kind of the big thing for Maryland, just in general, is trying to find a way to slow teams down.
I totally agree with you there. I will say the SMU game, it was impressive to see them make stops when they needed to. I believe they only allowed 7 points in the second half. So SMU was definitely in the game towards the end, but Maryland was able to get stops when they needed to. And then a name to watch, Bo Braid on the Maryland defense had 15 total tackles in the SMU game, plus an interception and a forced fumble. Maryland's defense is going to need a performance like that to flash against Michigan. And I'm just curious because I feel like I've heard so much just from a national perspective about Michigan's non-conference schedule and it being a little bit on the softer side with Colorado State, UConn, Hawaii, not exactly world beaters in college football. So I'm really curious to see exactly how much of a test this is for the Maryland defense, because from what I've seen, obviously JJ McCarthy and the Michigan offense are putting up great numbers, but they haven't exactly been against the best of the competition. So I am really interested to just see, how Maryland's defense holds up against an offense like this that hasn't really been tested yet.
Well, considering that we've, it took me all week to actually get you on here. I don't want to keep you for very long. It is a Friday episode. We tend to do those short and sweet. So tell me I'm going to go two more questions with you here. First one being, give me a couple reasons or a couple ways rather that you could see Maryland winning the game. Like what would have to happen in your eyes for Maryland to find a way to come into the big house and upset the Wolverines?
The biggest thing that I want to see different for Maryland this week as compared to last week is playing disciplined football. Against SMU, they had 15 penalties for 141 yards. So the big narrative after the game was that Maryland did not just have to beat SMU, they had to beat themselves. They cannot afford to do that against Michigan. They're significant underdogs anyway. And so I would really just like to see disciplined football. Some of the penalties, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, they're penalties that could have been avoided. So I would really like to see that. And then Talia Tagovailoa just needs to be consistent. We know he can be great, but I think last year what he would run into, especially against Iowa, their defense in that horrible game I don't like to remember where he threw 5 interceptions, is him trying to do too much. Be consistent and make the right decisions with the football. And I think good things can hopefully happen.
Well, that is going to be, it's going to be interesting, I think, regardless of just, like you said, Michigan, this is the first real big test. And that offense that Maryland does have, I mean, it's going to test a new look defense that's looked good against teams that have not necessarily had a lot of firepower. So that certainly is a sticking point here. Lastly, how do you actually think the game is going to go? Give me your just generalized idea and a final score prediction.
Ooh, how biased am I allowed to be on this podcast?
You're allowed to be as biased as you are willing to put out there. Our tens of viewers will be judging you.
I just never know when I'm introduced as the producer of Full Ride if I'm allowed to let the full feral student section Maryland fan out of me. But honestly, I would really like for Maryland to cover. Right now, I've seen it in Michigan getting 17. Hopefully it's closer than that. But, you get scarred as a Maryland fan by the statistic I just gave you to start out our interview, that the first loss has come by 3 touchdowns or more. As a fan, I would like to have a reason to watch the game in the fourth quarter. So I'm hopeful that the defense can stop J.J. McCarthy and the Michigan offense enough to where Talia Tagovailoa and the offense, I believe that if it's up to them, they can keep them in the game. But if Maryland's defense lets Michigan's offense do whatever they want, then it won't be close. So I'm hopeful to have a reason to watch the game in the fourth quarter.
All right. I won't make you give me a final score prediction. I'll let that stay as it is. That's I was going to say but that's just me channeling Childers. That's Full Ride's lovely, esteemed American treasure, Allie Gehring.
There you go.
That's what I wanted to say in the opening, and I completely forgot it. As typical. Thank you so much for joining. Super excited to have had you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That was the American treasure, Allie Gehring. So excited to have her on. She's a friend. Very one of the there are a few very avid Terps fans out there. Obviously, Scott Van Pelt, Monty Bernstein, but Allie is my favorite. So excited to have her on this episode. I mean, we had her on a couple years ago. Last time, I believe Maryland played at Michigan in 2019. So it's been a minute. Nonetheless, all right, let's go ahead and move on. We don't have a lot here, to be honest. So preview shows, it's like I feel like we all get a good kind of idea of what Michigan's going to face. So unless you're talking like Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, it's just I don't feel like there's necessarily a lot because it, for the most part, is Michigan versus itself. Anyway, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. You're going to want to finish the year strong and have the right team member so that you can do that. That's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so the way that I look at this game, like I kind of said in the lead in here, is it's, to me, I understand that this potentially has some issues. This game does. But one of the things that I think that always tends to happen when Michigan faces its first tough opponent and or gets into Big Ten play is we start to downplay what Michigan is. And I say that even though I think everyone is predicting a pretty sizable win for the Wolverines. I mean, the spread has been hovering between 16.5 and I think like 18.5. I think it's changed a little bit here and there. Of course, Michigan hasn't faced anybody as of yet, but at the same time, this is still Michigan, right? This is still like this isn't like it's always going to be a complete reset from the year before. I mean, all these guys played before. So I think it's kind of weird that it ends up getting treated like, yeah, this is, they haven't played anybody yet, therefore they could come out and be terrible. Chances are that's not going to happen, right? Chances are this is going to be, this is still a Maryland team, albeit very shorthanded last year, that Michigan beat 59 to, 18 or something like that? 59-18, I think is what it was. Maybe it was 59-19. I don't remember the exact score. I just remember Michigan had like 58, 59 points. But Michigan still is super deep from top to bottom. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy changes things. This is his first big opponent. I think maybe to some degree this is the only reason I have a little bit of trepidation. Not because I don't think J.J. can't handle it, because he played against Ohio State, he played against Georgia. It's one thing to come in for a couple plays here and there, and another to do it, from the beginning and all the way through. So, that said, I don't have a lot of trepidation about this one. Maybe I'm being arrogant about it. I don't know. But to me, it doesn't feel like a game that Michigan should come anywhere close to losing. And honestly, as much as people are out there, I think Athlon Sports had Michigan on upset alert. I think that's absurd. Especially when you look at what Maryland's did. Like, Maryland needed some miraculous plays to beat SMU at home last week. And then yet you've got people out there thinking that Michigan isn't even as good as SMU. I think that's absurd. Maryland has some really good players on both sides of the ball. Their offense is scary. But if Michigan is the thing that everyone thinks it is, then it should have no problem with Maryland. And I feel like this happens every year. It's just like sometimes it's Indiana, sometimes it's insert team here, really, outside of Ohio State. And if Michigan is supposed to be on the same par as a team like Ohio State, and generally it's been at least one slot below it, it's been on the same plane, maybe I think a little bit ahead of like Penn State, then it beats a team like Maryland handily without even any question about it. And we get into some kind of reset. And this has been going on for decades, right? I remember even in 2016, a bad Michigan team, it seemed at that point, going up against a bad Notre Dame team, both of them 0-2, I believe. And it was like, ooh, I don't know. But Michigan entered the season at number 5. It just happened that they loafed in week 1, and Oregon ended up being a heck of a lot better than anyone thought in week 2. And, you get into some of those games, or, even more recently, 2015, BYU's coming to town. I don't know how that's going to go. Well, went well. Oh, Northwestern's coming to town. I don't know how that's going to go. Went just as well, a little bit better even. It happens all of the time with this team for whatever reason. This weird reset where it's like, okay, now they're facing a team that's maybe better than some of the ones that they just beat. How's it going to go? Well, it's probably going to go pretty well for Michigan. So outside of 2020, Michigan's only lost to 2 teams at home, and that's Michigan State and Ohio State. 2020, a little bit of a different scenario. Obviously, they lost to also to Wisconsin and Penn State. But, no fans in the crowd, weird season, all of that stuff. Things were on the downswing. So, I mean, I just don't feel like Michigan is going to be. It's kind of like that Illinois Chattanooga game on Thursday night. Whereas the spread was 20, and I was reading some things before that game, and it's like, oh, that spread's a little too high. Chattanooga is a pretty good FCS team. And, and watching the broadcast there, at the beginning of the game, they're like, oh, Chattanooga's, they might give them a scare. This could be a game here. And I went into that game thinking there's no way. I'm like, they're going to win. Illinois is going to win by at least 20. Right? Because that's what a team like Illinois is supposed to, that's at least playing good football, is supposed to do against a team like Chattanooga. Is no different. A team like Michigan, what it should do against Maryland, if it was, when Alabama plays the middle tier of the SEC, there's never any question. I understand. I'm not actually equating Michigan to Alabama, but within the Big Ten Conference, it's up there, right? It's because it would be the same thing with, Georgia in the SEC. So you don't usually really question. Now, yeah, you might have one weird one-off loss, but I just don't expect that to be the case. This team is really hungry. They're talking about this game like it's the Ohio State game, even during press conferences this week. It seems to me like they are focused. They're good to go. All right. I want to go and answer someone's question that was on Instagram that would have been in the mailbag, and we'll see where we go from there. We're not going to keep it very long because preview episode on a Friday. Shelf life for this, not very long. But we're going to do that here momentarily. But this episode has been brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up the college football season. I in my pick'em this weekend, you know what? I really like UNC over Notre Dame. I think that's I look at Drake May. I think he's going to be higher than 254.5 passing yards. I like Drew Pine from Notre Dame, lower than 217.5. There's other games out there too, looking at Louisville quarterback Malik Cunningham over 95.5 rushing yards against USF. I think that makes sense. But go ahead and make your own picks. I've got a litany of picks this week, absurd. But anyway, it's easy to play and available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team. Not just your team, and decide if they'll finish higher or lower. One of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold hard cash in a single game. So go and sign up with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's all one word, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's deposit $100, get $100 free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or use the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On, all one word. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. All right, so let's continue on. I got this question a couple times here from Jake Weissman on Instagram. Like I said on the Thursday show, it's the Instagram adding those. I've kind of stopped doing that. But I feel bad. So Jake Weissman asks, haven't heard a peep about Julius Welshkoff and haven't seen him play. Is he injured or underperforming? Considering he was top 10 on the Freaks list, I would expect to hear a little more. I don't believe he is injured, and he has been out there. I'd have to. We can take a look at the snap counts here, but I mean, I just don't think they moved him back to edge. It is frustrating for a guy who, he's been on the freaks list for a while. He lives in my neighborhood. I've been high on him since he was a recruit. For him to not really get out there very much is disappointing. But I mean, he's played 79 snaps so far this year, mostly on kick and punt return. But I mean, he's got 23 kick coverage, 25 punt return. But he does have 30 on the D line. So actually, technically, he still has most. If you split it into 3, I mean, he's playing mostly special teams overall, but he is playing on the defensive line as well. So, I mean, it's a long season, right? Anyone can come out at any point in time. That's just kind of how it goes. I wouldn't write anybody off. He's switching positions again for the umpteenth time in kind of a loaded, crowded position group where they need different guys to step up. Right now, Jalen Harrell, Mike Morris are the guys that I feel like have stepped up the most. But, there's other guys vying for it. No one's really gone out and taken it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Julius ends up being a guy who does that. So still just kind of waiting for that. Obviously, he's in like his 18th year of the program. So, hopefully he finds a way to make that work before the season's done. But we'll see, All right, so before we completely finish out, obviously I got to give you my prediction for this Michigan-Maryland game. I see a lot of people that say that they expect Maryland to kind of come out and do some things early. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if drive 1. It's kind of like at the beginning of the season, right? Like this is almost like a new beginning of the season to some degree, where it seems like I think back to the Western Michigan game last year, or even a little bit this year against Colorado State, where it's like, okay, now they're moving the ball against Michigan. And at the first scripted series, and I know Michigan stopped Colorado State, didn't do it against Western Michigan thanks to a penalty. But then from there, it's like, okay, Michigan finds a way to clamp down. I wouldn't be surprised if Maryland moved the ball. Doesn't mean they'll score, but like moved the ball relatively easily with the first series or 2, and then I don't think it's going to be like for a quarter or anything. I just think maybe once they have their scripted what have you going on, Michigan will adjust, and then it will be something else. I think Jesse Minter will have a lot of stuff planned for this game by virtue of this is going to be, I think, the toughest defensive situation that they'll have outside of Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State. Certainly some others will find some ways to test the Wolverines defense, but I think this could be up there with Ohio State with just the amount of firepower. They got an experienced offensive line. A lot of them not grading out that great, but it is an experienced offensive line, and it's got a lot of bulk to it. So I think that the defense will give up a couple drives early. And I think the offense just won't be stopped against this Maryland defense. I think this will also be a pedal to the metal type game. I don't necessarily think that they're going to try to make an example of Maryland, which is why I don't think it's going to get like Ohio State game nuts. Because I feel like Ohio State historically has kind of been like, we're just going to put up on you whatever we can, and we're just never going to stop. And Jim Harbaugh generally doesn't do that, but he has done that at times. I think this will be a statement game. I think they're tired of hearing inside that building that they haven't played anybody and maybe they're not any good. I think that they're going to come out there and try to assert themselves. I don't see where people have it as like an 11-point game or anything like that. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. I have the Michigan winning this game 48-17. I think it could be higher than that, but I think that's what it will end up finishing at. So that's what I've got. There you have it. We will try to have a post game like we did last week to react to it. If I'm smart with my other workings than like I was last week, then we can make that happen, but we will see. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for watching and or listening. Very much appreciate it. So we'll talk to you again soon. Peace.